Is a Damian Lillard deal finally going to happen? And the new kind of owner that can come in and completely remake the NBA. We're going to talk about it right now on the Locked On NBA podcast.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On NBA podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you for making this show part of your daily routine. We're here for you Monday through Friday, and on Wednesdays, it's us, me, John Karalis, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. Find me on Twitter at John_Karalis.
And I'm Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast on Twitter at NolaJake.
Summer League is done. We are now officially into the sleepy time of the NBA season. Everybody's popped their Ambien. Everybody's going to go into a nice little hibernation. And here we are with like Jaylen Brown still doesn't have an extension. Damian Lillard's still out there. James Harden's still out there. All kinds of stuff still kind of hanging out there. So, but hey, we're still here.
Look, there's no days off. There's still a ton of stuff going on in the league. And like some big piece of news is going to break in the middle of the summer. People are going to be on vacation and Locked On NBA is still going to be here breaking it all down the next day.
Yep. Say, hey, if you're podcasting from the Bahamas, it's just dedication is what it is. Hey, later on, we'll talk about the new kind of owners that could come into the NBA and even make team relocation just, I don't know, rampant, more possible. It could be
something.
Who knows? But we're going to start with Damian Lillard and the possibility that he can actually finally be moved. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. This all comes from, the Dame stuff comes from Shams Charania, who basically said, I'll quote him, "What I'm told, Portland has told Miami, make your best offer to us." And so normally in a negotiation, when one side says to the other, give me your best and final. Let's go. We're done talking. Best and final. I'm going to say yes or no, and we're going to move on. I guess the question here, Jake, is, hasn't Miami already been making their best offer?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions here. We could turn this one into like a real or fake pretty easily, but
no, let's do it. Let's make this our real or fake.
Okay, real or fake. Let's go first segment, real or fake today. But
yeah, let's do it. Real or fake. Dame's going to get traded. This is it. Best offer is coming.
Yeah, I think so. So. If that reporting is accurate, I think this is real. I think it comes from, and this is a week after Joe Cronin said, like, we'll go into the season with this if we need to. If it takes months, it takes months. And now he's like, all right, just make me your best offer and we can get this done, is what it feels like. It basically, I think, is signaling that no other offers are coming in. No other team is getting into this. And Damian Lillard's leverage play of, I only want to play in Miami. I'm going to be, as we talked about literally last week, right? Pulling a James Harden on this sort of thing. You know, the threat of that, I think, has scared a lot of teams, and it doesn't sound like other offers are coming in. And so if those other offers aren't coming in, this is essentially Joe Cronin being like, I don't want to like do the negotiation. This is him walking to the car dealership and being like, I'll give you sticker price. Can we just call it a day and I can get off the lot with what I want? And so if Miami comes in with their best offer, then this gets done. The follow-up question is kind of what you said. Like, did Miami not make their best offer? Because then they just have cost themselves time and actually like opportunity cost in free agency, where we've heard it reported that they can't make some moves or things like that because they don't know what they've got to do when it comes to Damian Lillard. They should have just gone in and be like, this is literally all we can offer you guys. Like, we'll give you whatever picks we can do. We'll include the young players. Like, this is literally it, because there's not that much there. But they tried to like lowball Portland and all of those things. Like, they just wasted time and kind of hurt themselves. So if they make the best offer, like, yeah, I think a deal gets done now.
I'm going to go fake. I'm going to say that this is Portland. I think there's a little bit of a little bit of gamesmanship here going on, and saying Miami, everybody's saying Miami's offer is not that great. Like, it's
not like, yeah, that's true.
So I feel like there is a little bit of, okay, I'm done playing here. Give us your best offer. And Miami, like, what else is Miami going to offer? They're not going to throw Bam Adebayo in there, right? They're not doing that. So this is it. This is their best offer. Maybe this is, we're not doing this deal. Go find a third team or a fourth team if you have to, but go find somebody else to give us more, because you alone don't have what we want. We want more. We want to make sure that if you're going to trade Damian Lillard and you're going to say, fine, you're going to go to the team that you want, even though we don't have to. We want some value. So when we come out of this, we just don't look like the team that kind of capitulated and got screwed. So I'm saying that this is fake. I think this is a public kind of signaling that we want more. You don't have enough. We know this has been your best offer, but we're still going to put it out there that we need your best offer. So go get more or else he's going to stay. I think them saying this could last months. I know that they probably don't want it to, but I think they are actually willing to, because it's Damian Lillard and he's not going to come back and screw the team. He's not going to go James Harden on them. He's just not. He's too much of a pro. So they can say, we're working with you, but we can't get screwed here. You can't screw us on the way out. We're not going to screw you on the way out, but it's just not going to happen the way you thought it was.
So I wonder then, my kind of follow-up to that is this, okay, so like essentially this comes down to they need to ship Hero to a third team, right? And get a first-round pick and or a young player for him that's like kind of intriguing and not Tyler Hero, because I don't know if Tyler Hero is borderline top 75 in the league. Like it's close, but maybe not. And clearly the Portland Trailblazers don't want him there, and there's redundancy in positions. Is this them going, all right, we'll deal Lillard to you if you go and move Hero, get the piece we need, and then come back to us, and we're not going to do the legwork. You need to do the legwork. We're not going to like reach out to other teams. Pat Riley, you make the calls here. I, Joe Cronin, am going to go on vacation and chill. Call me when I'm chilling on the beach and go, we got whatever third team X. They'll take Hero. It's an extra pick coming to you. You good? Here's the trade. And then he can just sign off on it and hang up. So it's like a pre-agreement to sorta do a deal, right? Like, is this like a promise ring to the Miami Heat from the Portland Trailblazers?
I mean, it could be. I look at the worst case scenarios. Whenever a situation like this happens, I like to look at what's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario for Portland is Dame comes back and, oh, gee, too bad. A popular player comes back and fills the seats and we make some more money. For Miami, the worst case scenario is, damn, we don't have Dame. And, they made this magical run to the finals. That's not going to happen again the way they're constituted. And they even lost players that kind of helped that along. So they need this. They're older. Jimmy Butler's older. They need to get some help in there. So it's, despite Lillard being the guy who asked for the trade, the pressure to me is still on Miami, because Miami's there as, you're the team that he wants to go to. You don't have a lot of assets. He doesn't have a no trade clause, and Portland is willing to keep him. So you can't just sit there and be like, hey man, your star wants to come to us. We're just going to sit here with this crappy offer and be done with it. Like, no, you do have to flip Tyler Hero. You do have to find a way to get different kind of assets here and make this work for Portland. You, like you said, you, Miami, have to do the legwork. This, whatever you've been giving Portland is not acceptable. So try harder.
So say they try harder, then you think it would get done?
Yes. I don't think.
Do you see him? How's this? Do you see Damian Lillard going to any other team than Miami?
I mean, at this point, probably not, because I think other teams have been scared away by it all. So I think Miami is still going to be the team, but because he still has a bunch of years left, and he's getting older. So
it makes a lot of money,
right? Does it matter to Portland if Damian Lillard falls off a cliff? No, not really, because they're going to suck either way. So if he falls off a cliff, then hey, sorry, Miami, you'll go somewhere else. We'll figure it out. We'll figure something out with Dame. But if Miami can work a third team in, they need Dame now. They can't wait till next year, because who knows what Dame's going to be like? Who knows what Jimmy Butler's going to be like? Who knows what that team's going to be like? They need him now. So make some of the calls, make a tough call with whichever players need to make the tough call with, and get Butler, Adebayo, and Lillard together on that same team. You need to make that happen. The pressure to me is on Miami to make that happen. So if they find a third team, then yes, I think Portland will do the deal. I do not believe, as of right now, I do not believe that a Portland-Miami 1-for-1, two-team trade happens. I don't think it happens. This has to be a 3-team deal.
I mean, that seems like the right idea in theory. I just wonder as it gets closer and if no other teams come forward, and no one's come forward so far. And look, eventually someone you figure will have to take a chance if the price like keeps going down, right? And it's like, okay, for that price, like I'll take a chance on Damian Lillard being unhappy here, right? Like I'm sure New Orleans would do it if they didn't have to trade Zion or Brandon Ingram in a deal. Like why not? What have you got to lose at that point? You know, even if Lillard wants to leave later, you just flip him. So some teams might eventually, but if Miami wants to get this done, it's flip Hero, get whatever you need there, then send it all immediately to Portland, and then we don't have to talk about this anymore.
Yes, I'm done talking about it right now. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to new kind of ownership, sovereign wealth funds. You hear sovereign wealth fund, but it's basically a foreign country. Can they buy an NBA team? And how does that change the dynamic of what potential NBA ownership will be? First, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook is the official sportsbook of Locked On. And you can take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20. You'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 that you can spend on anything from the money line to the over-under to who you think's going to hit that first home run. I guess betting on Shohei Ohtani to do that is probably your best bet. All on an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid right away. And isn't that what you want? You win your bet, that money shows up right in your bank account. There's no other place to bet on the MLB other than FanDuel. Nowhere else to go. America's #1 sports book. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. You get $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is an official partner of Major League Baseball. Just ask you, if you're going to bet, go for it. But please gamble responsibly. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every single day. Hey, you want to learn more about Lillard? Check out Locked On Blazers, Locked On Heat. They got you covered. Locked On whichever team, Locked On Pelicans for whatever Zion's doing, Locked On Celtics for me. If you want to figure out what Jaylen Brown's doing with his extension, check it all out here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Jake, a little piece of news that kind of flew under the radar, but it's a bigger piece of news than it people probably realize. During Summer League, Adam Silver was talking to the Associated Press sports editors, and a question came up from Tim Bontemps of ESPN about sovereign wealth funds, right? Foreign countries, Qatar, these generally the Saudi Arabias and countries like that have been buying into teams, have been buying teams in European soccer and have bought into Monumental Sports and Entertainment, which owns the Wizards. They own 5% of the Wizards, Mystics, and Capitals, that group. So Adam Silver was asked about, can they buy an NBA team? And it's allowed. It is technically allowed in the new collective bargaining agreement. They can buy an NBA team, but Adam Silver says it's preferred to have individuals. It says, the quote, "It's very important to us, putting aside sovereign wealth funds, that individuals are in position to control our teams, to be responsible to the fans, be responsible to their partners, and to the players." Jake, is this kind of like the future of the NBA? Teams are getting to be super expensive, $4, $5, $6 billion. What happens when the Knicks, a big market, big legacy team, the Celtics, the Lakers, these big time teams, what happens when they sell? And as the commissioner said, we're kind of running out of people who can afford to buy these teams.
The new collective bargaining agreement, and people were like, oh, we don't need to talk about that. It's like, no, you do. I think this is a really big deal. You look at what's happening in European soccer and you kind of see the spending of some of the teams that have been bought. Newcastle, in the Premier League is a really good example of that, and throwing some money around. Because basically to these funds, money is no object, right? When a fund is worth $800 billion, does the luxury tax matter? And you made a really good point of like, as the price of these teams go up, you don't have like individual people, one person, right, that has that kind of money. You start to see big collections of folks, right? You put those ownership groups together that might have 20 people pooling their money to buy a team, and that can get a little bit messy at times, though. And one thing we've learned is the NBA wants to keep growing. They want to tap into new markets. And if a foreign country essentially controls a team, that whole country might be paying attention to that team. It puts new eyeballs on this. It gets the NBA and expands. Like the Philippines have a sovereign wealth fund that was just created recently. And look, we've all kind of used Kai Soto in a headline here or there for the SEO to get a bunch of listens. They're crazy for the NBA. You think they wouldn't be flocking?
Huge basketball fans. So if the country, and this is a simplification of it, saying the country owns it, but let's roll with that for a second, right? That's a huge market that the NBA could tap into. They might want individuals to control it, but if that organization, that sovereign wealth fund, is going to give you $8 billion, $10 billion to buy a team because they really want in, Adam Silver ain't turning that money down. The NBA is not going to turn that money down. The other owners aren't going to turn that money down. And you look at the Suns and Ishbia, who is spending, right? Like he came in and we were like, oh my God, we thought the second apron was going to be like prohibiting people. And he proceeded to be like, no, I don't care about that thing. Yeah. And then JID's salary dump campaign saved him $20 million. But if your sovereign wealth fund is worth $500 billion, I don't think $20 million matters. And they would probably keep him. And so it has a chance to really change the way teams operate, I think. And then there's the larger question we'll get into in the next segment on like relocation and things like that. But, I don't think this is going to happen right away, but you and I talked expansion last week, right? Vegas, Seattle. Could one of those teams get sold to like a group of individuals and another one sold to a sovereign wealth fund, like the Vegas one potentially? Like, I think there's potential for things like that. Yeah, look, the money is where the money is. And if an individual person doesn't have it, then you got to find it somewhere else. And they're not going to devalue the teams by taking less money, right? No one's going to that's not how this works. The league is growing exponentially, which, I mean, at some point it's going to come back down to earth, you think. But right now, this is what it costs, and this is what it costs to buy in. And it's going to be harder I do think about the Celtics, for example, because they're one of the longer tenured ownership groups, and they bought the team for something like $300 million. Now you can sell the team for at least the Celtics $4-5 billion.
Easy.
That's a significant payoff on your investment. And even if you sold half the team, you sold, even if you maintain a controlling share of the thing, there are other ways for people to buy into these teams. But if someone wants to buy something outright, if a sovereign wealth fund slides in, then it's going to be hard for the league to be like, no, because then the question becomes, why don't you? And I think the reasons are for all the stuff that you laid out, because I think part of the reason is why you laid out, because if you thought Steve Ballmer was spending money, if you thought Joe Lacob was spending money, wait till you see this one outlier group that's just like, whatever, we'll just keep finding a way to keep these guys. We'll just pay it, and then we'll find a way to pay the next person. We'll find a way to pay the next person, and it doesn't matter.
There's the potential to just throw off competitive parity, whatever, they're trying to do, which is what the new CBA kind of was like designed to do. It was like, you can be competitive for 3 years, then you're going to have to break up the team because this is just going to cost you too much and you can't add on to the team at that point. The other reason to be real concerned about this, like, we'd be remiss if we didn't say this, though I don't want to get into like an ethical debate on this. There is some sports washing going on with a lot of this too, I think, right? Some of these countries don't have good human rights records and things like that, and they're doing this to almost legitimize themselves. This was the argument for Live Golf and everything with that. Like, this is a slippery slope for the NBA to go into as well, right? Is there amount of money that makes you overcome, say, your ethical background and things like that, and your morals and all of that? And there very well might be. And that's the type of thing that all of a sudden you look at the NBA in a different light with too. We could do a whole show just on that, like in and of itself, but I think we do at least like have to mention that on here.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point, and it's something that not only it's one thing to say, okay, you and I are billionaires, and we put our money together, and it's John and Jake buying the Pelicans and whatever, and it's us and our financial, and our pasts and our whatever. If you have to deal with an entire country's past and an entire country's indiscretion, you now open the door for investigation into these. Okay, which sovereign wealth fund is there? And every news item that comes out of that country now becomes a question for Adam Silver. Hey, Adam Silver, why is, this is your owners, one of your owners is doing this, and one of your owners is committing this or whatever. That's definitely something to consider. So I don't think that's kind of an unspoken thing that the NBA is like, yeah, we would prefer.
I mean, there's a reason he's saying we don't want that, and be a little minority owner, get some of that money in here, open some doors, but don't fully control a team. Hey, and then we don't have to talk about this as much.
Let's look at, like you said, Qatar is 5% stake in Monumental Sports and all the Washington teams. Well, they just had the big controversy hosting the World Cup. Why couldn't you ask Ted Leonsis, hey, why are you doing business with someone who committed all these things? It's a fair question, and I don't think the league wants that. Let's talk about team relocation. First, I just want to thank everybody for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Make it, you can. We're 5 days a week still. We're still 5 days a week here. So make it your first stop whenever you want the coverage of the league, in-depth coverage, even on something like this, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which could change, as Jake suggested. If a team is willing to pay all this money to buy a team, and if they got this kind of unlimited financial reservoir, if a team wants to buy it and say, hey, we don't want to be in this city, and hey, okay, I know you're going to use the New Orleans example.
It's my doomsday scenario that not keeps me up at night, but this is something that I'm genuinely worried about at some point.
But also, I'll let you get into that. But also, I just want to throw in my part of that thought. What happens if somebody buys into the Celtics or the Lakers and says, you know what? We don't like the team in Boston, and we don't care because we're a foreign country and we don't have to deal with the blowback. We're not sitting there. So we decided that we want to move the Boston Celtics to some other city and say, and ruin a legacy. You want to move the Knicks for some reason, which it'd be hard with a bigger market team. But my point is, teams with established legacies, they don't care about that stuff either. So no team would be safe.
No, this I do think has potential to literally change the landscape of the league in terms of where teams are. And I think this is where you get to a doomsday scenario. And it could happen to teams like the Lakers, the Knicks, the Celtics. I think the rest of the owners who I believe have to approve relocation are going to be no, you're not going to do those teams and they're going to stay where they are. But, look at a team like the New Orleans Pelicans. Gail Benson owns the team. There's no heir there. So some of the succession plans, they have some stuff in place, but eventually, when she passes, the team is going to have to be sold. Say one of these sovereign wealth funds comes in, buys, a franchise that's worth $2 billion for $6 billion, it's just an offer you cannot refuse. They could easily move the team. You can break leases and get out of it and just move the team, and you'll get sued. You will lose that lawsuit, and then you have to pay damages. But if the damages are $1 billion to an entity with 500 million or more, or even 500 billion or more, even 100 billion or more, do they care to get the team into a bigger market or wherever it is that they want it to be, assuming you can get approval from NBA Board of Governors and all of that? They can afford that. Money is just no object to some of these, right? They'll overpay if they need to accomplish what they want. So it creates kind of that doomsday scenario of, could Portland move? Let's say, could New Orleans move? Could others, it's more small market teams, I think, potentially move. And I think the answer is still a little bit slim on that and a little bit unknown, but it's not a zero. And that would be awful, I think, for some of these cities and fans.
Yes. You are correct, and teams would need to approve, but also understand that
owners don't like to set a precedent of like saying no to one another either.
They don't, and teams like the sovereign wealth fund can go to how many real estate developers and mortgage people own teams, right? You've got like Ishbia, like they could sit there and be like, hey, yeah, you don't want to move the Celtics, right? What if we do all of our mortgage business through you? And he'd be like, oh yeah, because in the end, money talks. They can go through and start going to each of these owners and essentially bribing them without technically bribing them by saying, hey, we're going to do business with you. We're going to, hey, pick somebody. What's his name from the Knicks? Dolan. Like, we need to build this.
Dolan would say yes so quickly. He would
so fast, right? Hey, how would you like a $2 billion contract to build these entertainment facilities in our country? He'd be like, yep, goodbye.
Yeah, that sounds
Boston.
great to me. Yeah. Please. He would love that, right? They have 100%. Invested interest in some of that at that point. The one part that's also interesting is states. Some states have sovereign wealth funds too. A state can invest their money their way. You see that, I think Texas is like one or two set up, for different fields and things. It'd be interesting to see like the state of New Orleans, let's say, create one, pool the money if they have it. And I don't think they have like the $3 billion they would need to like buy a team, but to like fully keep it within the state or something like that. And then just take the profit from it every year and like reinvest that back in. So it's just one of those things like, we haven't even touched on that, and that's a rabbit hole we could go down for a whole segment or two, right? Like this is something I find very fascinating that can really shake up the way the league looks like. Is that second apron of the luxury tax a big deal? Yeah, but not if you have unlimited money. It's not until you literally just can't add anyone else to the team at that point in time. But also, like, if you don't care about lawsuits, if you don't care about some of these things, they'll play hardball. They'll try, what if they just come in, you get two of these in the league and they have so much more money than everyone else. They start trying to kind of enforce their will and like bleed other teams dry or something like that. Right. Like then what happens?
Yeah, there are so many different ways you can go with this. The possibility is there. The possibility exists, and it's probably not that far off before somebody tries, because they've been doing it. They've been doing it in other leagues, in other countries, and the NBA is global. The NBA is big. And like you said at the beginning of this segment, there is incentive to say, wow, what if all of our team merchandise was all over pick a like a Saudi Arabia? He's like, all of a sudden everybody's Rockets fans, and that really just brings a lot of money in, just something like that. So it's very appealing to the NBA in a lot of ways, but also it's a third rail. It can be very devastating to go down this road.
Yeah, the new CBA has those things that haven't been covered yet. You and I were talking before we hit record here, and it's like university endowments can buy in as minority owners on teams and things like that. You got Harvard running the Celtics in the future because they can afford it. Like it's the whole thing. It's kind of crazy what could happen with ownership. We're a ways away, right? None of this, I don't think, is like an imminent. I don't want to call it a threat. That's not the right word, but none of this is imminent right now.
Right.
But it's something that the league at least needs to like be prepped for, because I'm sure a couple of these entities, I'll call them, saw this and we're like, oh, we got to get ourselves an NBA team.
Yeah. However it goes, I don't know, but there are a lot of owners out there that bought in for a lot less than their teams are worth. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a sell-off at some point. Like
you said this to me before. You said this to me before, right after expansion happens. Because all of those owners for two new teams are going to split the buy-in costs from those teams, right? So every owner, every franchise is going to make $500 million just right off the bat. You make $500 million. Those two teams, new ones come into the league, which will fetch record prices for both of those, let's say, right? I think that's a safe bet. Will then raise your franchise up and its value. So you just made $500 million. Your franchise went up. You sell that. You're coming out an extra $1 billion ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of these teams.
I think you'll get a lot of people selling their teams right after that.
That's going to be it. That's going to be it.
I remember you were in New Orleans. We were courtside at the Pels Celtics game, and we were talking about this, and I was like, I had not even thought about that.
Yeah. That's what they're waiting for. It's going to be. I think there's a sell-off coming. A lot of these owners have a lot of money coming their way. It's going to be interesting how these new owners, how the league business kind of because I think at that point it's going to plateau, but I don't know. We'll see. Team ownership, it's important because that affects how the league operates. A new generation, a new type of owner changes how the next CBA negotiation goes. It changes a lot about this league. You don't know what it's going to be, and this potential introduction of sovereign wealth funds can reshape the league sooner than you think and in ways that you couldn't imagine. So it is. I know it's tough when we say sovereign wealth funds. You're like, oh God, but it is actually super, super important and can change the way the NBA operates. So we'll leave it at that. I want to say thank you for sticking with us here through this Wednesday Locked On NBA, heading into the offseason. But still, like I said at the beginning of the show, tons of unfinished business to go. So Locked On NBA is going to have it covered, unlike any other show. So check it out. We're here on Wednesdays. I'm John Karalis, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. Find me on Twitter at John_Karalis.
And I'm Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast, on Twitter at NolaJake.
Nick Angstead, Pat the Designer, got you tomorrow. Make sure you're checking it out. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check the show out on YouTube. Subscribe there. And I would love it if you share the podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On NBA podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.